The Winnipeg Jets tied the game with 1.6 seconds left in regulation and won it in double overtime. Harrison Lee is here to talk about how they got it done and what it'll take to keep going in this year's playoffs. All that and more next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back a man who has got to be exhausted but happy, Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. What a dramatic win. What is the emotional roller coaster that the Jets and their fans have been going through this evening?
Stupidest hockey team on the planet, man. If you even try to explain the Jets, there's just no point. I don't say this lightly. This is the team of destiny this year. This is the one. I don't know how else you look at whatever they've gone through. They've lost top 6 players left and right. They lost their top pairing defender tonight. They were without Scheifele for the whole evening. They were basically without Morrissey for the whole night. And yet somehow, down 3-1, you come into the last 2 minutes of the game, you realistically have no shot. I mean, there's just no reason for anyone to believe that somehow this game was still in reach. And yet somehow this team, against everything that had been thrown their way, dug deep. Years of playoff failure, I think, crystallized into 2 minutes that finally paid off. And then, overtime, they just took over. And it was really just a feeling of inevitability. As long as Hellebuyck locked in, you just hoped that with the Jets peppering the goal, something had to go through, and finally it did.
Is there one player or one moment that you saw that just told you this is going to be different?
Neil effing Pionk. That guy, he played the best game that I have ever seen him play in his entire career. He's had some good ones for the Jets, but, he's a guy who's taken a lot of flack for some of his defensive miscues. He had a goal go off of his butt cheeks earlier in the series that killed the Jets. And in a game where you are feeling the pressure of Game 7 and the weight of so many playoff failures before, he stepped up in a way that, I think really embodies everyone stepping up. I'm going to single him out, but the whole defense put on a tremendous game. Hayden Fleury played his best game as a Jet, and it wasn't even close. Sandberg, I think, stepped up in a huge way. DeMello made some critical stick pokes and saves. This was just a game where you asked everyone to be a hero. Even Luke Schenn, for me, who's kind of been a lightning rod for trouble this series, made a couple of big blocks, a couple of big hits, and it just felt like a weight had to be lifted off the shoulders of not only the team, but also the fan base.
Talk to me about Connor Hellebuyck. Up and down throughout this series. 1 minute he looked like the Vezina Trophy winner that he's probably going to be again this year, and deservedly so. And 1 minute he just looked shaky, to say the least. He came through big time, but what's going on with Connor Hellebuyck right now?
Honestly, I think if anyone really had a clear answer, maybe they'd have fixed it by now. Maybe it's a sports psychologist. Maybe he's just got the yips. I really don't know. I've never seen such a stark difference in somebody between the regular season and the playoffs. And I get that when you're in the regular season, the structure of it, you're only seeing teams once every so often. You're not really getting them in a consecutive series. And so the stuff that they'll target is going to change every night. But I just feel like when Hellebuyck even has one slightly off evening, the history of it follows him and the whole team just starts to lose composure. And I think that's what kind of happened throughout the series. And it was both him and the team. But, the first couple of goals tonight, the first one, not really his fault. But 2 and 3, you're just like, you got to save at least one. Somewhere there just has to be a moment where you lock in. And then overtime happened, and it was like none of that even mattered. He didn't look like the same goalie. So I don't know. I really wish I had a clear explanation for what's going on. I've never seen somebody have this kind of split. He's putting on an all-time historical worst goaltending performance for a playoff goalie ever, and yet somehow in the critical moment in Game 7, when everything was on the line, he finally locked in. And I'm hoping that he can carry that into the series against the Stars because, oh Lord, this is about to get so much harder.
Is there something you're seeing him do differently when he's on versus when he's off?
I mean, there's been some depth challenges. I mean, he slides. He's always had slower lateral motion, so I think that's been a bit of a tricky proposition for him because like he's faced a lot more screens in the playoffs than he has during the regular season, and so when he's sliding across, everyone's shooting against the grain far post, and he's really struggled with that because there's been like 2 or 3 guys in front of him. So there's that. He also always plays low, and sometimes I think he drops low almost instinctively, to prevent anything from going through his pads. But, he's had everyone will talk about his glove side thing, and that's just how he usually makes saves. But I do feel like because he's lacked a little confidence and he's not seeing the puck as well, he struggled to make those pre-positioned reads. He struggled to really feel those shots coming in. And so I just think stuff that kind of squeaks by him really is just nerves. I really feel like that's part of it. I've seen people talk about the workload. I don't feel like the workload has been the problem. I think it's just anxiety or something. That's my best guess. He can tell us 60 different ways that he's studied the position and everything, but I just think the pressure has probably gotten to him. And so I'm really hoping that this moment for him is the thing that kind of helps him move past, it's a lot to say, but hopefully he feels a little more confidence in himself going forward.
You mentioned some of the heroes of the closing few minutes and of overtime. Give me an unsung hero of this opening round series.
So Cole Perfetti, I mean, this is a super easy one, but the kid, I've always been a believer in him, huge fan. This was a series where he made really small, good plays along the walls. He was defensively responsible, and I thought it was a fire spark even when he wasn't on the score sheet. But then, in some of the last couple of games, he's really started to stamp his authority on this team. And, it doesn't even need, I joked on Twitter, he doesn't need the C on his chest. It's in his name. And I think that's the kind of performance that you got from him tonight. Another unsung hero, Morgan Barron, I thought played some pretty heroic hockey throughout the series. He frankly deserves more ice time. Lowry has looked pretty under the weather. So, I think having him do that work would be great. If I'm looking elsewhere, probably DeMello is the last guy I'd really sing the praises of. Dylan's looked slower this year. And, at his age, with the amount of miles that he's logged on his skates, it looked like it was really starting to catch up this year. But this playoff series, I think he really stepped up when Morrissey just hasn't looked like himself. Morrissey has been, and I hate to say this, but terrible. And I don't think it's by choice. He just has been injured or something. And I think tonight was kind of it coming to a head with some of the hits that he took. So we'll have to see how that goes. But DeMello, Pionk, Fleury, Sandberg, all these guys in his absence, really stepped up in a way that maybe earlier in the series you didn't always see. So tremendous performance there.
The Jets played very well in the regular season against the Dallas Stars. What are the keys to beating the Stars and advancing to the conference final?
Oh Lord. What do I even say? So I think one of the big things for Winnipeg is starting faster. They've basically started slow in almost every game against the Blues. They were down in so many of these games early. And I think that is not going to go as well against Dallas. The other thing with the Stars is I don't think they're going to be nearly as physical. The Blues really just tried to assassinate the Jets because they knew that pound for pound, talent for talent, they didn't have the skill edge in a couple of key positions, and so they had to try and wear the Jets down very physically. I think Dallas is going to be more of a fast counter team. They do hit hard, just not at the same degree. So I think Winnipeg might actually have a slightly easier time in this series relative to just the kind of hockey that they've had to go through. I think if they've survived this Blues series, it sets them up with a kind of playoff mentality and really the bumps and bruises to sort of go with it that can help you stay mentally challenging or mentally tough in these harder series. And I think the Stars one is going to be pretty brutal. Heiskanen's likely coming back. Robertson should be coming back soon. So this is going to be a really deep team, and I don't know what's going to happen with some of the injuries the Jets have had. Everyone's kind of feeling it right now, but especially right now, it's starting to really settle in. And if Morrissey is going to miss time, that could be a really big issue. So, I love Pionk, but I don't know if I want to ask him to do Game 7 every night for the rest of the postseason.
All right, Harrison, I know you'll cover this every step of the way. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
We are on Locked On Winnipeg Jets on YouTube and all of your favorite podcasting platforms, same as Locked On NHL. And of course, my X/Twitter handle is @HLLivingLoco. That's pretty consistent across most social media platforms. So see you then, and appreciate y'all listening.
Thank you so much, Harrison. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.